Hello guys and welcome back to Let's Go. And because I already have the front wheel off, what I'm going to do is show you how to change the front bearings. I know I've touched on this before, but I basically showed you the aftermath of how to do it. This time I'm going to take you through step by step. I know that a couple of you have had an issue trying to get the shaft out of here, especially taking the hub off of the shaft. Mine's already loose and free and easy to do it, but we're going to show you a quick technique on how to do that. So let's get started. So to get the shaft out, as I said, there is quite a bit of goo from the factory when it is in there. I know that you guys have had a little bit of a problem getting that out. What's going to be your friend here is the adjustable wrench. So what we want to do is on either side of the shaft there are two flat spots. What we want to do is get the adjustable wrench on the outer bearing just there and clamp that into place just on the flat spots. We don't want to be going too hard here because we don't want to damage the metal. Now we've got that clamped, we've got the leverage, we can hold it there, it's not going anywhere. The goo is usually around here, it's very tough to get out. So what we want to do is just wiggle it back and forth, wiggle it back and forth, wiggle it back and forth, and then it will eventually come loose. It's a bit of trial and error, just keep doing it until it finally comes away. And then you've got your brake assembly. By the way, these last absolutely ages. You're rarely ever going to change these unless you're braking full on all the time. And if you're braking full on all the time, you're probably either on a hill or you're going over the handlebars. So now we've got the brake assembly out. We've got the outer bearing and we've got the inner bearing. Mine don't actually need changing as I've only changed them 6 or 7 months ago from my last video, but we're going to show you how to do this anyway. This is all done with basic household tools. A vise would come in very handy for this, and I advise you buying a vise, but if you don't have one and you just want to change it with household tools, this is the way to do it. So this is not the right way, but it's a way of doing this. On the outer bearing you do have a little washer here that actually keeps everything on. This is also gummed up from the factory. So to get the shaft out, what you want to do is the shaft comes out that way, so that's where the bearing goes. It will go the other way as well, but it's probably easier to bash it out that way opposed to that way. Ideally you would use a mallet. Mine recently broke, so I don't have a mallet, I have a regular hammer instead. So to protect that, we're going to put a bit of cloth over the metal and we're just going to keep tapping it until it comes out. If you keep whacking at it, you're probably going to break something. So just tap it, tap it, tap it, add a bit more force each time until it finally comes out. Mine's been out before, so it's going to come out nice and easy. As you can see with the shaft, we've got the bearing and the bit of metal there. This is going to be tough to get off, so your first bearing is going to be sacrificial. It doesn't matter because that's what we're changing them for anyway. Inner bearing here, we're going to take that out first, and what we need is one of these. These come in most cheap tool sets. It's what I'm essentially using, and it's a spark plug remover. So we're going to chuck that down into the hole there, and we're just going to lightly tap that out. Make sure we use a cloth just so we don't ruin the tool. There we go. The inner bearing is now out. Put that to the side. So to get this out, what we can do is where the inner bearing was, thread it back through, and we're going to use the bearing slot to be able to take it off of the shaft. Pop that on there, now have the shaft out. This has probably gone back in. It's going to happen, but we can then simply do the same again and knock it through. This tool only gets used for whacking, so I don't care really about this. If you've got tools you care about or you don't want to break, please use a cloth or a bit of wood. A bit of wood is actually better to whack against. That's both bearings out. They're not too bad. They're a bit damaged now because I've taken them out. But you can still see a little bit of the lithium grease that I put on there. I do use the CV grease for car CVs. You're not driving at high speed, so it doesn't matter too much, but I want something that's going to stay in there. So, put that to the side. At this point, it's always good to inspect your parts, so make sure that everything is where it's meant to be. Is your brakes in good condition? Yes, they are. You're going to find a bit of rusting on there, especially around here where the water can get in, and you're probably going to have a bit of rust all around the place, but we can clean that up. You can get a bit of sandpaper and clean it up as well. If you're going to sand inside the hole here, do not be doing aggressive. Only fine sanding is fine, nothing too aggressive. Otherwise you're going to take the metal back, the bearings are not going to fit properly. So the bearings I'm going to be using today are the SKF 6001 RS's. They're not expensive, they're on Amazon. I think last time I paid around £10, £15 for them on Amazon. You can probably find the equivalent in the US as well. You can purchase more expensive ones, but as long as you've changed the stock ones from the factory, you know, it's better than the cheapest of the cheap. So we want something a little bit more robust, and if you're changing the bearings often, like I can do for you guys, it doesn't matter too much. So what we want to do really is just make sure that the bearing is well greased. As you can see, these are actually really well greased as they are, so we're not going to add any additional grease to these, and they're going to be absolutely perfect. So I'm just going to pop that back on, and now here comes the juggly part. So we want to put our bearings in the slot, so we're going to do the inner bearing first. Should be a nice snug fit, not too hard. There we go. And then my hammer just sits over the middle of the race there, so just lightly tap it in. You may find that a block of wood over the top, if it's not going in, to whack it in, that'll work better. So on the other side, this is where it gets tricky. So the short end will go to the outside, of the bearing. I'm going to pop it in that way. I'm going to pop our bearing on the shaft. Actually, there's still a bit of goo on there from the factory, but it's not too much of an issue. I'm going to pop that on like so. That in. Okay, so at this point it becomes a juggling act. So I'm essentially going to get the socket over there. I would like a bigger socket or a actual bearing press, but I don't have one. What I can do as well is squeeze that up against there to use it as a barrier. Go on the outside, put that on there, slightly wider socket to go on the bearing race, and then socket over the top. We're just going to hammer it in. This is where it becomes a bit juggly if you haven't got a vise. 17-inch socket over the top. But essentially, when we hammer one side, we don't want the other side to come out. And then the socket over the top. And we're just gonna lightly hammer. Needs a little bit more. Perfect, so that's flat against there. And take that out now. Make sure that your brake fits on flush. Nope, so that needs to go that way a little bit more. Oh no, you see that's now come out again, out of there. So we're going to do the same. Lightly tap. Against each part of the race. There we go. Now I bet the other side's come out again. Yeah, the other side's come out a little bit. It's not, oh, there you go, it's popped out. This is unfortunately the tricky part of this. So we do not want to be hitting the plastic or the rubber seal as much as we can. This is where a bearing press would be so much useful, you know. But there we go, so that's flush, that's flush. Let's put this on here. Free moving, that moves perfectly. Bearings sound good. There's no damage to the seal on that side. There's no damage to the seal on that side. There is a slight mark where I bashed it, but it's not bad. And then on the outside, we're just going to pop on the seal. You can pop some Loctite on it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to put some Loctite on these threads here when we put the wheel back on. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this informative and the method that I used didn't deter you from actually changing your bearings yourself. It is difficult when you haven't got the right tools, but it can be done. At some point I would like to invest in the proper tools to do so, but I don't change them that often that I warrant having those tools. Maybe if I had a couple of scooters that needed them fairly often, I would have that. But for most people, the method that I've showed you is perfectly adequate. If you find that you don't want to do it yourself, please go to a shop. That is the best place to do it. This is not the right way. This is just a way of doing this. If you like this video, please subscribe and we'll see you in the next one.